Hey everyone, welcome to Tom Manitas Jobs. My name is Tom Manitas. We are starting here another, our third time we're doing a finding a job during transition. This time it's 2022. We started this back in 2018 at a time after elections where a lot of members of Congress and senators have lost or retired, and there's a big transition, whether it's in a presidential year and an administration is leaving and new one's coming in, or it's a midterm elections where there's a lot of change on Capitol Hill. There's going to be brand new leadership on both sides of the aisle in the House. You have a lot of senators and members who have retired and new members coming in. And it's a time where people are coming off campaigns and really not sure what to do. And that's why we're having this for you. We have an incredible panel, a bipartisan panel full of people of all ranges of political backgrounds and experiences to provide information for you tonight to help you get that next job or an internship. So whether you're a junior in college, you just graduated from school, you're coming off a campaign, or you're mid-career and you want to go into the government, or you're in the government and want to get out to go to explore other opportunities, this is the panel for you. But really quick, a little bit of background about Tom Manitas Jobs. I always say it's called Tom Manitas Jobs, not just because I'm an egomaniac and named it after myself. But when I was on Capitol Hill, I was in a privileged position in leadership. I had come off just being an intern for then Minority Whip Nancy Pelosi. She was nice enough to give me my first job on Capitol Hill. I was with her for 9 full years. And before Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, there was just email. And in that privileged position, I was getting all these emails, all these job postings and internship postings from the intra-Capitol Hill network. And I started forwarding them to people. And it became this thing of like, you got to get on Tom Manitas's jobs list or internships list to find out what's open on the Hill. I fell in love with a Republican who was working for President Bush at the time in the White House, and she encouraged me to make it bipartisan. So when her colleagues left the Bush administration in 2008, I helped a lot of them find jobs. And then since then, when I left Capitol Hill, my wife and I built a website to put every single job and internships that we can find out there, so that at least a part of the hurdle that had been there for so many years to get involved in politics was overcome with our jobs and internships postings. But a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is networking your way to those jobs. So in politics and in policy, only so much of getting that job is finding out about it. Pretty much 75% or so is networking your way there. So how do you go about doing that? That's where we're going to give you those tools tonight. But before that, an overlay of finding any job or internship is knowing what in the world is happening in politics and in policy all across the country, but especially on Capitol Hill. My true source of news, and I think the best source of news, is Punchbowl News. Punchbowl News was founded by Anna Palmer and Jake Sherman. Lucky enough to join us tonight. I knew them as reporters on Capitol Hill in my young part of my career. They've gone to new heights in their careers, having run Political Playbook and now founded, these are the two co-founders of Punchbowl News. And it's really, I tell people, even when my company wouldn't pay for their service, I put money out of my own pocket to pay for the premium service, because their 3 newsletters a day are so valuable. I'm not saying that all job seekers should do that, but at least sign up for their free morning version, because it's a must read for anyone in politics and policy. But I'm going to turn it over to Jake and Anna to kind of give a lay of the land of what's happening now and a little preview of 2023. Guys, take it over.
All right. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. So for anybody who doesn't already read us, this is going to be the first plug, which we have is you can sign up to our free morning newsletter at punchbowl.news. Punchbowl is a Secret Service nickname of the Capitol. And we started this company almost 2 years ago, really with the kind of concept that we wanted to cover the leadership on Capitol Hill, its relationship to the White House, and the industry that wanted to influence what's happening here. A lot of folks on the Hill really have become kind of the hometown paper of the Hill, kind of start their day then, sets the agenda, and then we have a premium community that is a midday and a PM report. We also do a ton of events. We really try to interact with our readers in different ways, whether it's brown bag lunches or coming to social events, and certainly hope to see a lot of you all there. But I'm going to kick it over to Jake, who can talk a little bit about where we are right now, and I'll chime in after that.
Yeah, I would also say Anna and I created this company because we love Capitol Hill, and we think it's the center of the universe, especially in Washington. So if you're here, then that's a sign that you might agree with us, which we appreciate. It is a great place to work. It's a great place to be. It's a great place to, I think, understand the world of Capitol Hill and the world of politics. But I'll stop talking about that, and I will talk a little bit about what we expect for the rest of this year and in 2023. Obviously, we are in a period in which there are just incredibly tight margins. We are going to have a House that is probably 221 or 222 Republican seats, and a very narrow majority for Republicans, and Democrats right behind them with, whatever that would be, 213 Democrats in the House. Let me stick on the House for a second. As Tom said at the intro, I mean, we're going to have on both sides of the aisle new leadership. Nancy Pelosi, who Tom worked for, who has led House Democrats for 20 years, is stepping aside. She will remain in Congress. And Hakeem Jeffries, Catherine Clark of Massachusetts, and Pete Aguilar of California are taking over. That is a huge sea change. It can't be overstated how big of a sea change that is when it comes to how the House will be run. On the Republican side, we have a less certain situation. Kevin McCarthy of California, trying desperately to win the speakership, has 30-something days until he has to go before the entire Congress and get 218 votes from his Republican colleagues to become the speaker. I am going to withhold judgment as to whether he'll be able to do that or not. But he had to drop out once before in 2015. I don't expect he'll do that again. If you're thinking about ahead to the next Congress, one of the big areas, and I know many of you probably know this, is oversight, investigations. The House will be probing every aspect of the Biden administration, of COVID response, of corporations. It's just going to be a very heavy investigative climate. There's a bunch of other stuff that needs to get done. I'll turn to the Senate in a second, but government funding will need to come up at some point in the next month here, and then again at some point at the end of next year. Debt ceiling is another big fight. We don't anticipate a ton of big ticket lawmaking from Republicans because of the narrow majorities, because Joe Biden's in the White House, because the Republican Party does not really tolerate much bipartisanship at this point. The Senate has a much bigger job. The leadership is going to stay the same, but Joe Biden is going to be trying to get through as many executive branch appointees, including judges, across the finish line in the next couple of years while he has control of his party has control of the Senate. So that's what to watch out for there. But we're in a moment where the Republican Party, in some respect, is going to be trying to grapple with what it is, grapple with the candidacy of former President Trump, and how much he means to the Republican Party is one of the big narratives we're going to be looking at. And we do expect Republicans to kind of follow some of the things that Donald Trump says. They're going to be investigating big tech platforms, is obviously something that they've made very clear that they're going to do. You're already seeing investigations into Hunter Biden. So that's kind of the 30,000-foot narrative about where we are. Anna, what am I forgetting?
Yeah, no, I think you laid it out really well. I mean, I think for us, we're going to be covering all of the different machinations in terms of these leadership fights, certainly in the House with Kevin McCarthy, but then also the dynamic in the Senate with the Georgia runoff. What does that mean in terms of, kind of the Democrats' majority and this kind of narrowing agenda for President Joe Biden? I think with that kind of gives you guys the table setting, as it were, a couple days before Thanksgiving, of what's happening on the Hill. Again, just if you aren't reading us already, it's punchbowl.news. You can sign up for our free morning newsletter. We also have a morning podcast, The Daily Punch. And with that, Tom, we'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Anna, Jake. Really appreciate your time. Guys, please go sign up for Punchbowl News right now. They're tremendous. Thanks again. Well, let's turn over to our panel now. Usually I've said, we don't want these panelists to tell us where they came from in their career path, but I've been told time and time again, it's so valuable to hear certain people's paths to where they are today. The four panelists today are wildly successful in their own right. They've all been in multiple positions, very prominent positions, and currently sit in prominent positions that you can learn from their experience, people they've helped in the past. One thing I'll say about politics is that is so true. It's a very, very pay it forward world that we work in. Every one of these individuals had someone help them when they were first starting out. Every one of these individuals had someone help them get their current job. I had someone help me get my current job. So everyone continues to learn from each other in this whole community and continues to help each other out. So I'm going to first turn it over to Stami, who will give a little bit of background on the way she started and where she is today. Thanks for doing this, Stami. Oh, I think you're muted. I can't hear you. Oh, I still can't hear you, unfortunately. Why don't I, Jim, you mind helping her out? And I'm going to go, can we switch to Michael Long and Stami will work on your audio? I'm sorry about that. Michael Long, you want to go next?
Sure. Can you hear me? Making sure
Yes.
we're good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Tom. I really appreciate it. Always good to see you. I also have to do a quick special say hi to Jake and Anna, who are my neighbors on the office front. So good to see you guys. Quick about my path. I'm originally from North Carolina, and I grew up in a family that was involved in politics and community service. My dad was an elected official growing up, so I was knocking on doors and making phone calls since I was a kid. But from that, it still sparked my interest in pursuing a career in politics, more so when I went to undergrad, which was at Elon University in North Carolina. From there, I came to Washington as an interning for a federal affairs firm, working on education policy, but also just simply learning the process, learning how DC worked. From there, I worked for a nonprofit, the Association of American Medical Colleges. I went from there to an additional government affairs firm until the Democrats won the majority back in 2007, 2008, where I also joined Tom in Speaker Pelosi's office. From there, I was in the office for about 15 years, and now I'm currently a principal at the S3 Group, which is a bipartisan, bicameral, multi-client federal affairs and public affairs firm. Generally, I would say, tipping off of some of Tom's introductions, along the way, I definitely had people to help me out. Specifically, the chief of staff for my hometown congressman, who I met when I moved to Washington, the gentleman who I interned for, who today still serves as a friend and a mentor, and then, of course, the colleagues that I met along the way, starting in the Speaker's office, but also throughout the House and Senate, and even some who served in the White House. I'm happy to be here, happy to join the panel, and looking forward to your questions.
My name is Carlos Sanchez. Tom, thanks for having me again. Sort of a veteran of Tom's panels. Quick story about me. Background, started my career as a staff assistant for a congressman from New York City, Joe Crowley. After that, was a communications director for the CAC. After that, I was a press secretary for Nancy Pelosi for about 6 years. Then I was Joaquin Castro's chief for about 4 years. Went on to, while I was Joaquin's chief, I was also Hillary Clinton's national political director, and then went to work again for Joe Crowley at the Caucus, for then Assistant Speaker Lujan in his leadership office, and now I'm the chief of staff for Senator Lujan in the Senate. Like Tom said in the opening, I would not be here if not for somebody else helping me out. So I hope that this panel does that for you guys, and feel free to lean on any of us as a resource going forward.
Thank you for having me. I hope you can hear me okay. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Like my friend Michael Long, I'm actually from the great state of North Carolina as well. But I come from the Republican part of the state, which is also the eastern part of the state. You know, my time, I've been in DC now over 20 years, and I moved here directly out of college from the University of Tennessee, and I knew exactly this many people, 0. I moved here as an unpaid intern, starting on the campaign side, working for the National Republican Congressional Committee. And a few weeks in, I needed a paycheck really bad. Even 20-some years ago, rent was really expensive in Georgetown. And thankfully, they hired me at the committee for a very, very low salary. And you know what? I'm very, very grateful that I had any dollar coming into my paycheck. I think it actually, when you start kind of knowing no one and really from the bottom rung in Washington, I think it makes it a more dynamic situation for you to rise the ladder because you really learn the dynamics that you need to be successful. I lucked out. I ended up working briefly for a PAC downtown before being hired to gear up the political operation for a guy named John Boehner back before he was even elected majority leader at the end of '05. We were successful in getting him elected as majority leader in the House. And then you fast forward a few months and we lost the majority. I ran his national political operation, which was the greatest job I'll ever have in my career, no doubt. But we did lose the majority in '06, and our job, Mr. Boehner's job at the time as a Republican leader, was to earn our way back to a majority. And I was part of the team to help do that in 2010 when we won the House back with 63 net seats. So it's pretty cool to work for the same guy as majority leader, Republican leader, and then in his first year in the Speaker's office. At that time, my wife was pregnant with our first child, and Boehner was saying, when the hell are you going to go out and get a real job? And so I took him up on that, and I moved to the American Gaming Association, and I was the head lobbyist for the U.S. casino industry for really almost 6.5, 7 years before joining Subject Matter to build out the Republican side of their practice. I tell you all of that because going back to where I started, I knew exactly 0 people when I moved to Washington. And it's because of the ties that we all build time on the Hill and our friendships, whether it's in a social setting, at church, or anywhere in between, that really helps position you for these next steps, the decisions you will make. I'm excited to be part of this conversation and hopefully can provide some value to you. But Tom, let me kick it back to you. And again, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Whit. Love that a lot of us were on the opposite sides of those elections, being both Republicans and Democrats here. Stami, we're going to turn it to you again. Hopefully your mic's working now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. My background's a long one. I started with a lot of internships. My first one with U.S. Senator Johnny Isakson, next with Senator Saxby Chambliss, another one up in Washington, D.C., and then with the governor of my state, Governor Nathan Deal at the time. And that's all important because it plays into how I got my next job. And I think, unlike a lot of people, I started my career in my home state of Georgia, in the U.S. Senate office with Senator Saxby Chambliss. It was election time, 2014. He was retiring, but I think it's important for people to know that it's okay to take a risk. It's okay to jump on a team, even if the ship is kind of sinking and you're going to face an election. But that's when you really try out your skills and you find out a lot about yourself. So I ended up on the staff of U.S. Senator David Perdue for a couple of years. I made the jump over to the House side with 3 members of Congress after another retirement, a loss, and a lot of transition. So Congressman Jeb Henserling, Congresswoman Karen Handel, and Congressman Joe Wilson. So a lot of interesting things there. And I feel like it's perfect to have this conversation for the transition. After Capitol Hill, I moved to the Republican State Leadership Committee. It was all 50 states, and we look out for all of the candidates that are in the state legislature, the state Senate, lieutenant governors, secretaries of state, and agriculture commissioners. And it was obviously a really exciting time with redistricting. So after that, I said, you know what? I once told myself I would never do campaigns, but decided it was the right time to make the leap. And I moved to New Jersey for a year, where I was on the governor's race with Republican candidate Jack Ciattarelli. It was a close race, but it was a very fun one. And I really encourage everyone to maybe take that leap of faith, even if you don't think you're going to do that right now. When that was done, I headed over to PhRMA, which is the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America. So I'm really loving my job. It's with state public affairs, and I'm learning a whole lot.
Awesome. Thank you all. Well, let me open up the first question, and I will kick it over to Whit and Michael for their take. When new members of Congress come to town, their inboxes get flooded with resumes. If you're somebody who's either on a campaign looking to get a job with one of those new members, or you're on the Hill looking to get a job with one of those new members, or go to a member that might be going from the House to the Senate, can you talk about that process? How do people get their resumes into those offices, whether you're that campaign individual or somebody currently on the Hill? Whit, you want to start us off?
Sure. I mean, it's a good question, and it's probably a situation where there's not one single answer. I mean, I would advise any of you in that situation to flood the zone. If you're coming from the campaign side, then obviously you have a leg up within the existing new member elect that you may have worked on. If you worked on a campaign that was not successful, then you need to flood the zone with your echo chamber, both in Washington and within the orbit of the potential office that you may have interest in working with. What I mean by flooding the zone is, and it sounds awfully cliche, I know, but you need to be front of mind on the radar with the decision makers in member office XYZ. And no one's going to do it for you in most cases. You do have to be assertive in a way that is persistent, but not annoying. And so I would advise you to do that now, because certainly for the new members, I mean, they were in town last week for new member orientation. They'll be back the week after Thanksgiving for additional actions there. And really that, and then the leading days up to the Christmas holiday is when they're going to start rounding out staff. It depends on kind of the chief infrastructure and what they may be putting in with the senior staff. You quickly will be able to find out, what hires are happening there. And then you can certainly use your own network to try to get front of mind with those decision makers in real time. The second phase, and then Michael, I'll kick it to you, is don't let this first round discourage you. There are awful lot of folks who get hired in this first wave that may not be there, a month or two or three into next year when Congress actually is sworn in and operational. And so if there are areas where you're interested, but it may not work out this go around, keep it in the back of your mind, because there is churn both after the election, and then there is churn that occurs certainly in congressional offices, particularly the freshman office in Congress as well. Michael?
Sure. I think the first thing I would say is try to be, especially for those who are currently in Washington or those that are interested in coming here, is looking for work here is a little different than other sectors. There's plenty of other sectors where you can send your resume via an email, or there is a structure put in place for you to apply online. There's an HR department, et cetera. Lots of places in Washington kind of work in a very old-fashioned way, where it's very much sort of the front of mind, but actually in front of your face too. So some of the networking you have to do will have to be in person. So once you sort of narrow down what it is that you're interested in doing, make sure you span your network, cast that wide net, if you will, and let every person that you know, make them aware that you're looking. That's number one, because you never know who people are connected to or what you might be interested in, or may not be interested in, but just hadn't realized that it might be an area of interest. Also wouldn't limit yourself to what you are interested in doing in your day-to-day. A lot of people get a lot of jobs that sound nice, or they look for jobs that sound nice, or you ultimately have an interest in it. For example, let's say you want to be a legislative director. You may have a law degree. You may have experience, but oftentimes you'll need to take a job or position to lead you to that. So apply for more things than you're just interested in, just to get your foot in the door. So I would say get to DC first if you're not already here. For those that are already here, make sure that you are using that network to your fullest extent. I could go on, but I think that's a good place to start.
That's great, Michael. And Whit, thank you both. Piggybacking off that question about networking, because again, that's so critical to all this. And that last question was asked by Danielle. This one's asked by Maddie, and she asked, how do you maximize networking opportunities in this new hybrid and remote work world when there's less in person? And I think Michael hit a nail on the head. Is like, in person is best. I think we'd all agree that we're in the people business. But Carlos, as a chief of staff, and then Stami, as someone who's worked in multiple congressional offices, Can you talk about how to work this new reality we're in, and maybe also picture somebody who's maybe in school in a remote capacity, and wants to start networking here with people in DC, or someone who's on a campaign or here in DC? What's that mix of in-person requests, Zoom, phone calls look like in your opinion? Carlos, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. Yeah, so I think the best way I would describe it is be aggressive, but don't don't pester people. What I find really useful as a hiring manager is when I get an email from somebody, a cold email from a young person, say, hey, we're interested in working in your office. But then I also get an email from somebody that I know saying, hey, this person is really good and they're looking for an interview in your office. I think having that validator sort of puts your resume or your email to the top of the inbox and helps me, because we get a lot of emails, helps me sort of sort through those emails in a way that makes sense for me. So what I think I found useful, and I think people who have emailed me found useful, is they actually go to my LinkedIn, see who I'm friends with. And the thing about politics is just such a small world that everybody knows everybody. I mean, a great example is even this panel. I've done this panel with Stammy, I think twice already. So Stammy sent me somebody, I'd be like, oh yeah, she knows what I'm looking for. So I take a look. So I think it is a combination of like Whit said, flooding the zone, but also picking those relationships that you have that might coexist with the person you're looking for to try to get in the top of their inbox.
Tom, you want to answer this one too?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've seen it firsthand. I am an adjunct professor at George Washington University, and when I first joined the team there, I thought that we were going to be in person, and it quickly shifted to everything virtual. So I talked to tons of students who share your concerns, but the best way is, in my opinion, I think that LinkedIn has really grown leaps and bounds through the pandemic, and it really is a good way. Always make sure that you have a really nice picture of yourself, something professional, something without other people in it. Just make sure you get yourself a nice photo. It doesn't have to be expensive. Just get a camera, get a friend, make sure that your pictures are uniform on your platforms, and then make sure you're reaching out. But make sure you're targeted in your ask. Make sure that you know to a degree what you're looking for, because sometimes it can be, if you're reaching out to someone, I think it can be challenging. If you don't know what you want, then how is the person that you're talking to supposed to know what you want? So I really feel for you, but definitely always try to reach out, and don't hesitate to reach out to people. I'll say this probably again, but always feel free to reach out to me on the side on LinkedIn if you'd like to ask specific questions.
Can you all talk about somebody who, and I think Whit started off by saying he knew nobody here in town when he started. For those that are first out of school that don't yet have that first internship or trying to get that first internship, or coming from a state, we had one question, I think it was from Joe, saying, if I have experience in California, but I don't know anyone in DC, how do I go about doing that? So Whit, you want to kick us off, and we'll go to Michael after you, and then round robin to Carlos and Stami. But with that question is like, how do you start your network in DC, or how do you, whether you're fresh out of school or in school or having previous work elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, of course, when I did it, it was the old school way of, you actually search sites like yours and sent lots of emails and notes. And this was even in the infancy of email. I'm embarrassed to tell you, I guess I've gotten old since I've gotten here. But the tool that, that Stami just mentioned, between LinkedIn and some of the other things that I probably don't even know how to pronounce, you've got that to your advantage in a way that, Tom, you and I didn't have when we were first coming to town. So you definitely want to use that to your advantage. And at some point you are going to find an opportunity. And the point that was made a moment ago, and I do want to underscore it, is, you probably don't have the luxury, if you're first coming here and you know very few people and you're straight out of school, in being too selective. And so the trick, and it was said earlier, is get your foot in the door and, use all of the tools and technology to at least understand what the opportunities may be, and then you can push those buttons accordingly. Certainly, optics, professionalism, and things of that nature are very important just for introductory purposes where someone may not know who you are. But I have no doubt that if you leverage that coupled with your existing relationships, you will get your foot in the door somewhere. I think what's important is once you get here, and I totally appreciate the nature of the challenge between the hybrid world we live in now, but I actually do think that it is a differentiator, even at this very moment in time, if you can be in person, if you can have coffees with people in person. You're going to meet people just by proxy of being here, and you want to use that to your advantage. And I do think, I see it even in my day today as a multi-client lobbyist. I know the very folks who have not been up on Capitol Hill or are not going to fundraisers or not doing this and that, and they haven't been since before COVID. And I know those that are, and I think it gives a competitive advantage. And I would say that the same thing will apply as you're coming to town, knowing few folks with a small network. Build your network, and you can do that using technology, sure, but you cannot replace that completely without having the in-person component as well.
Well, I start with there might be a realization that you actually have a network in DC and you may not think about it. Colleges have alumni groups. Every state, for the most part, has an active state society. Those are built-in social networks that you, when arriving in DC or even before, you can reach out to that have common ground. Even if it's, there are Democratic clubs and Republican clubs, oftentimes by state and location. There could, if you have the privilege of living in more than one place, using the connections from those communities that exist here in DC. If you were in your fraternity or sorority, they probably have an alumni group. If you get to Washington, DC, like a friend of mine did, and you have a part-time job, then you join the kickball team and you start to learn and meet different people. I would also say, find someone in the LinkedIn space or in your research that has the job that you want, and try to find that individual to see if you can have a conversation with them. If you can connect with someone who has and also want to build, it's an opportunity for not just you, but for the person that you're speaking to. And every person that you have a conversation with, as I said earlier, tell as many people as you can that you're looking, because you just never know what that person might have in their inbox. Another conversation they can tee up with someone that has a common thread, a more common thread even than you and that individual. But and in that vein, I think you can start to build and really create a strategy for yourself to start. And I think you can apply both of those if you're here or if you're not here.
And Carlos and Stami, before you guys jump in next, we got two live questions here. One from Maggie saying, piggybacking off what Michael and Whit just said, what kind of questions should one ask in a networking coffee to cast a wider net? And then Brighton said, what happens when your broad ask for connections at the end of a coffee doesn't bear any fruit? So can you address those two first, Carlos, and then Stami?
Sure. I think the first thing you want to ask, first of all, I think Michael hit it right on the head. I think you have to just say yes to everything and approach everything with an open mind. Two, I think once you do get that first coffee or Zoom or whatever, you want to end that conversation, or you want to walk away from the conversation with having just one thing, and that is 3 names that person can connect you to sort of further your networking along. I think that in my experience, that's been the most fruitful. And that person, after you've had a conversation with them, knows what you're looking for and can tell you, oh, yes, you know what? Tom actually had that job before. You should talk to my friend Tom. So I think the best thing to do is to leave that conversation with 3 other emails that you can reach out to.
Something that I think is really important is making sure first that you have the right conversation with the person that you're talking to. And make sure that you explain what you're interested in, tell them what you're interested in, tell them what more about you. And then just naturally, the person that you're talking to is going to say, oh my gosh, I know this person. It would be great for you to meet. So have that full conversation first. And then at the end of the coffee, I would, if it wasn't made clear already, I would say, okay, so, do you think there's a couple of people that might be interested in connecting with me too, or that might be able to grab a coffee? And sometimes when the coffee isn't fruitful, I think I would just take it at that. Not every single thing is going to be a slam dunk with a job that's perfectly ready for you. But don't let that discourage you, and don't let that stop you from continuing to reach out to people. And also, don't be surprised when that coffee that wasn't fruitful at first turns out to be something great later when you run into them, maybe a year or two or whenever down the road.
Great advice. And one thing I just throw on is that you continue to build that network. Is like every single one of those coffees, you always send a thank you email with your resume attached. You always follow up in that email saying, here's the person you suggested I might want to get in touch with. Would you mind putting me in touch with them? And then keep a long list, a database, a spreadsheet of all those folks you've talked to, so that you can let them know when you get that first internship, first job, and you keep going back to that spreadsheet your whole career. I still have a spreadsheet that from 3 jobs ago of all the people that have helped me through the years. And each time I get a new job, I thank them, because even though it's directly attributable, them helping me with that couple jobs back has led me to here. And just a part of your team, a part of your stable of people who will and help you. A couple of questions. Oh, go ahead, Whit. Go ahead, Whit.
Before you go, I just want to underscore one thing you said, and I think it is incredibly important, and that is the art of writing a thank you letter, a thank you note. It's mostly a dead art, but I can almost guarantee you that if you choose to do it, you take 2 minutes out of your day and put a stamp on something and mail it to the business card that they gave you, they will remember you. And those are the small things that I think collectively will add up and help you differentiate yourself in ways that are so intangible, but so important you can't even believe how lasting of an impact they will have. So, Tom, you're spot on as always, but the little things really matter at this point, and they last with you forever.
Any other good tips like that, Carlos?
No, I think that's spot on. I think I will give you a quick anecdote. One of my former coworkers, we sent the letter of recommendation for law school, and the university, the law school we sent the letter for, actually sent us a letter back saying thank you for your recommendation. So if a top tier law school can send a thank you note, so can people who are asking for coffees. So I agree with Whit. I think it's a dying art, but I think it goes a long way.
Love that. And my advice that seems to work with many people is when you always put that thank you note in the email with your resume attached, you never know if someone's chief of staff's going to come up to that person and say, hey, we don't have any good interns. Who do you know anyone looking? I'm like, oh yeah, that young woman I just got coffee with, and you forward that resume over to that chief. That job was never posted on my website or anyone else, but it's because of your networking. But as Whit and Carlos are saying, that additional actual handwritten thank you note is just something people don't do anymore, and it's a way to stand out. And you're just looking for ways to stand out in people's minds as somebody who'd be good to hire, whether it's an internship or a job.
Well, you know what I would add, Tom, that you just said?
Yeah.
Making it easier for the people you're reaching out to, always including your resume, just makes it, you don't have to go fishing for I met that young person that needs a resume, that needs a job. Now you got to go fish for the resume. Having that handy, I think, goes along, makes it 10 times easier to push your resume around.
And that's one other thing is you're putting people giving your time, make it easy on them, show up early, offer large windows of time, sacrifice your own schedule or convenience for them because they're going out of their way to do that for you. We want to switch to applying for an actual job and interviewing because all of you guys have hired people over the years and know what you look for. A couple questions on an interview. Israel asked, how do I make a good first impression during the interview? And then there have been a couple mix of similar types of questions as what subject or what should you do after you've submitted the application? And that what are some good ways to stand out without seeming like you're being bragging or condescending, as Zachary asked. So as a hiring manager, each of your capacities, I'll start with Michael. What things do you look for both in those applications and the interviews, and then just kind of them advocating for themselves as that hire?
Well, first, for the resume, wanting to make sure it's done well, doesn't have errors, and is not a sort of everybody's template, if you will. I mean, I think the biggest things you want people to remember are the things you highlight. You want your name, and you want your address, and you want your email, and you want your qualifications that are connected directly to the job. If depending on where you are in your career, I will also say on the resume part of it is edit it. You know, at every position, every club, every opportunity that you've had is not necessarily applicable for the job. It does give a breadth of what you have done, but I would think it shows to me that you can take the opportunity and not completely brag about yourself, but give just enough for me to want to have the conversation with you. I always say, think of a cover letter as the introduction to your resume, and your resume is an extension and an invitation to have an interview. I would say that's number one. Appearance, very important, especially in Washington. Make sure that you are dressing the part of the organization in which you are applying. You can still be creative and you can still have your identity, but also adhere to the professional standards of that organization. And I would also say, the things, same with the informational interviews, show up on time, show up enthusiastic. But I also like to find someone that has professionalism, but a little sense of humility as well. I feel like you can read a little bit about a person through their resume and what they bring to the table, but really getting to the character to see if they are a fit for the organization, to see if you have a temperament for the job and the responsibilities, that comes out in your own personality. I like to have a conversation instead of the interview. A lot of people do more of peppering with questions and maybe addressing you with a panel, but be confident in what you're bringing to the table. Show up early and professional. You don't have to brag, because if I didn't want to talk to you, I wouldn't have asked you for the interview. So just have the conversation and see by the end of that conversation if this could be a good professional relationship.
Thanks, Michael. Carlos, as a chief of staff both in the House and the Senate, what about your tips on interviewing and applying?
Sure. Look, one, second everything Michael said about the resume and the appearance. That stuff's got to be tight. And on Team Lujan, we're really big on hiring for culture. Yes, I mean, we want smart people and we want people with skills, but we also want people that fit our team culture, which we try to be a very laid back office, but one that works hard. And so when I'm hiring, and this is through all my other jobs, I look for two things. One, intellectual curiosity, but two, like Michael said, humility. I want to know that no job is too small and no time is too early, no time is too late. And then you're gonna sort of bring maximum effort to our office. That kind of intensity, I think, just wears well on people. And I think, sometimes our jobs can be really laid back, but sometimes it can be really intense. We have all these voter-ramas where you're in the office 24 hours a day. I want to make sure that I'm hiring people that that when it's laid back can do their work on their own time, but when it's intense, can pitch in and can help the office, even in small ways. I'll give you a good example. Last voter-rama, it was none of the issues that I handle, so I went and got pizza for the office at 10 o'clock at night, and and I'm the chief and I go do that. I expect everybody else on down, if they have free time or available, to pitch in that way. So I would say that's the two things that I really look for in a candidate. And then the other thing I would say, Tom, that you had also mentioned is, how can you stand out? I've always found it very impressive when candidates, whether they're currently in their interviewing process or even after we don't hire them, will reach out with hey, you mentioned this in your, whatever, potash or, acequias or some kind of New Mexico thing. You mentioned this in an interview. I read this. I thought you might be interested. It shows that they're really paying attention when you're talking to them. And it shows just long-term interest, which I think is also a good way to stand out, to show that that you bring in that extra oomph to the office.
Whit and Stami, because you guys have done both Hill, campaign, nonprofits, private sector, you've kind of seen it all. And those are very Hill-centric suggestions. I assume it's the same, but you guys tell me I'm wrong. Are those tips the same? Are there any different ones? Stami, you want to jump first and then Whit?
Sure, absolutely. I do think, having been on both sides, it is a little bit different on the trade association side where I am at now. Pharma is a really awesome place. Always look for jobs in trade associations. It's a great place to be, especially if you're recovering from Capitol Hill or a campaign. But something that is important to me, and I'm not sure if it's that important to anybody else, is I feel like a one-page resume is a pretty good thing to have. I've known some of the smartest people on earth, and they've gone to great schools. Every school's great, but they're able to condense all of their hard work onto one page. So if there's a tip that I could leave, I'd do that. But the trade association world, definitely a little bit different from the Hill. I would say that, because there's more of an HR process, and the interview process can be a little bit longer. So making sure that you're always on time, whether it's on Zoom, which I did my interviews over Zoom, or making sure that you're always there and ready, and that you have a nice background if you're on the Zoom is very important, and making sure that you're following through. Because I think I feel like I had about 6 to 8 interviews. So it's going to be a lot different from Capitol Hill, but all of the same things still stand. Being punctual, making sure that you feel your professional best. Also, to realize that you're also interviewing the interviewer. You want to make sure that this is the right fit for you, whether it's the Hill or whether it's off the Hill. And it's really important to feel that way, because even though they are hiring you, it's a two-way street, and it's important to make sure that you're getting what you want out of the job too.
Love that. Whit, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what was just said, but I do think some of the attributes of either a junior worker or mid-level, or someone who's ready to move into a more senior role after their time on the Hill, the attributes are similarly attractive regardless of the job you may be interviewing for. And a few things, and again, I know it sounds cliche, but I think they do matter regardless of the job you're going for, and that is demonstrating the work ethic that that it just sets you apart, because you can convince whomever is interviewing you that you truly believe that no job is too big or too small. Everyone has a role to play, and each of those roles are important. And I think demonstrating that mentality, coupled with the ability to demonstrate kind of a cool confidence, because as was articulated a moment ago, not every day, whether you're on the Hill or you're downtown or anywhere else, is going to be unicorns and rainbows. And what I mean by that is these are high stress situations when they are, and it can be intense. And for those who can remain cool, collected, respectful, and civil, which sometimes is hard to do in the political dynamics that we face these days in Washington, but those are differentiating factors. One other thing, actually 2 things that I think keep in mind if you can articulate through the interview process, and it translates whether you're on the Hill or whether you're pursuing a downtown opportunity, is highlighting your interest in keeping and maintaining a high level of integrity. Integrity and kindness and respect are very much differentiators, I think. And while everyone wants to operate with a high level of integrity, it doesn't always work out that way in real practice. And so focusing on things like that, I think, also help give confidence to those interviewing you, regardless of whether you're seeking your job, that you conduct yourself in the way that that won't get anyone in trouble, and it will achieve outcomes regardless of what they are.
This has been so good, you guys. I want to keep asking questions, but I'm cognizant of your time. You've given us so much already. One last piece of advice, kind of just that you've had given to you that you think would be helpful to, again, people coming straight out of school, people coming off campaigns, even we had Beverly saying how she's looking to make a mid-career move. Regardless of where you are in your life and getting this next job or your first internship, what's a piece of advice that was given to you that you value that you'd love to pass along to these folks listening today? And Stami, ladies first, we will start with you, and maybe go Stami, Carlos, Michael, and then Whit.
Great. Thank you so much. I've received so much great advice from so many great people in my life. Something that I kind of gave a name to is pass the pencil. And I know Carlos and the whole team here mentioned this earlier, but pass the pencil to me means making sure that you know that there's no job that's too small for you. Even if you're the highest person in your congressional office or something else, sometimes you're all going to have to take on small tasks. So making sure that you hold that pass the pencil mentality, because sometimes something as simple as passing the pencil to somebody, if they're in a hurry, can be really helpful sometimes. And for the mid-career change, someone gave me the advice of kick off the training wheels. Sometimes when you know that you've done a great job where you're at and you're looking to make that mid-career jump, kick off the training wheels. It's a good time to take a risk. It's never too late in your life to try something like that. So just stay positive and everything will work out.
Well, I agree with everything Sammy just said. And then I guess one piece of advice that could apply to both beginners and people in mid-career looking to make a jump is just work hard. Like, do a good job. If you work hard and you do a good job, people are going to notice. And then the second piece of advice that somebody told me when I first started out, and it's not always easy to follow, but it's pretty simple advice, is just be nice to people. Like Tom said at the very beginning of the panel, this is a pay it forward business. And, people have long memories, and they remember how hard you worked, and they remember how you treated them, how you made them feel. So I always tell people, be nice. If not for your own sort of well-being and to feel good, be nice because it's good for business. It's always better to remember it as the nice guy who worked hard, or than the guy who works really hard, is really smart, but is kind of a jerk. So I think those pieces of advice got me very far.
I would say for the individual who is at the start of your career, especially in the political world, this is a service-oriented type of field that also is full of type A, very strong, very persistent, hardworking individuals in a competitive space. Take the opportunity to quiet all the naysayers about your choice and of your career and how you want to pursue it. I'm sure there's plenty of folks out there who have applied to law school and graduate school and want to give this politics thing a try for long hours and low pay because that's what you want to do. Go for it. You just need one yes to get in the door, even if there's a lot of no's. But there's also some of those no's are not the person who could be hiring you, but some of those no's are sometimes they're your friends and your family and your support network. But take this opportunity to step out on the confidence in your abilities to find that first get your foot in the door job. For the mid-career or senior level person, I would say don't be so quick to chase the money part before the opportunity. Yes, we all need resources. We all need a paycheck. We have bills that come every month. But take your time to find the opportunity that best suits your career. It's not just a job in many cases, it's your full career. So make sure you give it the due diligence and the careful consideration that you want. And I think you'll get the dividends tenfold. I mean, money will come, but that opportunity may not always be there. So chase the opportunity and take your time doing so.
I certainly agree with everything that's been said, and it's hard to come up with a few other things because my colleagues here are pretty darn brilliant. I guess from a tactical perspective, and this would apply for a young worker as well as someone in their mid or senior capacity, and that is any opportunity that you have to engage on a campaign, take it, even if it's just a weekend long GOTV effort or something. Just now, in terms of work ethic, can do, no job too big or small. So anyway, that's a plug to take advantage of that, even when it doesn't sound like much fun. But I can guarantee you, it is a ton of fun, and you learn so much. Anytime I interview anyone, I would love to see that they had campaign experience, because you learn something in that situation that you can't replicate in a classroom or walk in the halls of Congress. The two other things, Carlos said it, I'll say it differently. It doesn't cost anything to be nice. And it is just some of the truest words that have ever been spoken. And sometimes it's hard to do, but it shouldn't be. But always remember, it costs nothing to be nice. And the last piece of advice that I would give, and it's pretty basic, I'll quote my old boss, Boehner: if you do the right things for the right reasons, good things usually happen. And I think if you have that mindset, it gets back to integrity. It gets back to work ethic. It gets back to how you treat people. If you do the right things for the right reasons, good things typically happen. So those are kind of my three thoughts on top of a lot of excellent ones here. And Tom, I have no doubt that those listening in today are hopefully going to put some of this to use and find wild success in the years to come.
Well, I mean, this is great stuff. I'm probably going to type it all out and put this in a one doc, because that last section was really, really insightful. If you guys don't mind, I'll lay on a few more just to kind of highlight them. In a time where politics is getting more toxic by the minute, and maybe elected officials do things to stand out for a tweet or a Facebook share and a viral moment, the people that get the work done are the staff. Anything that gets done, for the most part, has to be bipartisan, whether you're on the Hill or off the Hill. Make friendships across the aisle. Be nice to people. Be nice to interns. I have a colleague who is a lobbyist now. Her former intern is a member of Congress that she has to lobby herself. Again, emphasizing the be nice part. Hard work and attention to detail is the recipe for success of every one of these people that are on this panel, the successful people that I know. And then ramming home Whit's point on campaigns, everyone is in DC in this world because someone won an election. It could be someone back home that won an election that sent the ambassador here to DC. It was a senator or state rep that became a member of Congress or that became a senator. Everyone is here because of an election, and we're a part of democracy. So understanding the democratic process on the campaign side is key to understanding what moves people in DC. So I think all of that, and including on that pass the pencil thing and no task too small, growing up politically and professionally, I always had bosses where the bosses like Carlos, who went and got everyone pizza or cleaned up the trash with the interns, that even they, as a prominent individual in those organizations, still did the little things because they weren't too big for themselves or their britches and kind of pitched in for the team effort. But let me thank each of every one of you guys. Whit, Michael, Carlos, and Stami, incredible advice. Thank you you guys so much. And all of you who tuned in, really appreciate it. Check out our other videos on Tom Manitas jobs under resources. We have videos focusing on getting a job in the White House or administration, being an intern on Capitol Hill, specifically just getting a job on Capitol Hill. But in a time where people are so nervous about what's next in their career after an election, and especially heading to the Thanksgiving table with family and friends, getting a lot of questions this week. Guys, thank you so much for helping those folks field those questions this week. Really appreciate your time.